Welcome, everyone, to today's Town of Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. The date is September 1st, 2022. This meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anybody else is recording the meeting, please let us know. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2023, because we don't know what the new governor is going to do, so who knows what that date means nothing. This meeting of the Chatham Zoning Board of Appeals is being conducted via in-person and remote participation and shall afford adequate alternative means of public access via Microsoft Teams by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, and then you punch in the conference ID number, which is 634-452-505, then hit the pound. Or you can join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. Despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we'll post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. In accordance with town policy, the public can speak to any issue/hearing or business item on the agenda during the meeting when recognized by the chair. To authorize this hybrid form of meeting, we would have a roll call of all members. Buck.
Buck votes yes.
Bill.
Bill votes yes.
Paul Semple votes yes.
David S. Nixon votes yes.
Randy Potash, yes.
And David H. Veach votes yes.
I would ask that any citizens, non-board members participating in the call via the phone, please give us your name and the last four digits of your phone number for ID purposes. I'm not going to go through how the hearing goes. We only have one today, and it's a continuation. So I'm going to jump right to that, but first I have an announcement, and the announcement is that our building commissioner is going to be joining us for most of our meetings. Sarah had spoken to me about this and spoke to Jay about it, and then they spoke to Katie about it. But it seems like Jay's name is being used by folks who are putting words in his mouth and insinuating he said this, or he didn't say this, or he looked at this, or he did look at this. And we got to put a stop to that. And unfortunately, that means for Jay being here, as he is today. Now, I didn't say, Mr. Riley, you put any words in his mouth. You did mention his name several times, though.
I did mention his name in respectful tone, by the way.
Yes, you did. Anyway, you're not the major culprit. You're a minor culprit, but you're not the major culprit. So thank you, Jay, for spending the time with us, and we greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Sarah, for that great suggestion. All yours.
Application number 22-063, 517 Stony Hill Road, LLC, care of William F. Riley, Esquire, P.O. Box 707, Chatham, Mass. 02633. Owner of property located at 517 Stony Hill Road, also shown on the Town of Chatham's Assessor's Map, 15I, Block 13, Lot 21. The applicant seeks to modify special permit number 21-022 granted on April 22, 2021, which allowed for the demolition of the existing dwelling and the construction of a new dwelling and swimming pool. The applicant now seeks to modify this special permit to allow for building coverage that exceeds the approval. The building coverage for the demolished dwelling was 3,861 square feet. The approved building coverage was 2,877 square feet, and the proposed building coverage is 2,953 square feet, where 2,950 square feet is the maximum allowed. The lot contains 39,011 square feet of land area and 26,200 square feet of buildable upland in the R40 zoning district. A special permit is required under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Sections 6 and 9, and Sections 5B and 8D 2B of the Protective Bylaw. This was continued from August 11th, 2022.
Good afternoon, Bill Riley on behalf of Air Safe Contracting, Kate Earls, who's present here today. Also with us is Mark Sangiolo, who's the architect. And so the question before you, the building ended up being 2,956 square feet of building coverage. there were two sources of that, and Mark will speak to them more specifically, but the one was that when the initial plan was submitted, they used a measurement of the foundation rather than the corner boards, which of course didn't even exist at that point. But with all due respect to Jay, there was a little bit of a lack of education amongst the professionals working in the town as to sort of what was to count and what wasn't, because previously, under a prior administration, all they did was measure to the foundation. In any event, there's no quarrel today that, Jay's ruling regarding how you measure coverage is you measure to the corner boards. And so a significant part of the difference in our building coverage is the fact that now it's being measured to the corner boards. Now, the second aspect is the change of the coverage, the cover over the front entrance of the building. And I'm going to ask Mark to come up and explain how we got to that. Could you put the pictures up? Oh, we want to see the picture with the there you go. All right, so this is the design that was approved. And you see so the entrance over the front didn't have, I guess, what I'd call wings. Can you show the other picture now, Sarah? All right, so now, this was a building that was being constructed on speculation. So a buyer came along, bought the building, and asked to have this type of coverage on the front. So I'll ask Mark to explain the dimensions of it and sort of what his understandings were at the time the work was done, to give you some
Okay,
understanding.
so anyway, you saw if we go back to the first picture,
Just
this is how-
Introduce yourself.
Mark Sangiolo, architect, West Harwich, Mass. So this is basically how it was designed, and frankly, I really wasn't happy with the front entry. It wasn't, it didn't bring the scale of the building down the way I hoped to. And when we had a new owner that purchased the property during the exterior was finished, a lot of the interior was still under construction, she requested that we redo the porch entry, and I was delighted when she said that, because I wasn't happy with what turned out. If you go to the next photo. So we made it have an arch at the entry and the two wings, creating a nice porch. And the one thing that it does, which I'm very happy about, it reduces the scale of the building. You can see sometimes, even though porches, they're counting towards the coverage, whatever, and we have all these zoning rules to try to reduce the massing of structures. Sometimes porches can actually help do that, even though they're adding to the footprint or adding to the coverage. So this was the new design that was done and reconstructed, and I think it came out very well. There's another photo, I think, of it too. Yeah, there you see how it kind of cuts the midsection in half and helps to reduce the scale of the project.
So in my conversation with Mark, I learned that when he did the redesign, he didn't consider the question of building coverage. There was some confusion in his mind whether it counted, because it wasn't over a building, it was just an extension. Since that time, we now know, or not, Mark now knows, that that coverage is clearly included in building coverage. And so like the other cases, like, last week when you were here, Michael Ford gave a 20-minute exposition on how the local building trades learned about Jay's ruling and how projects that were started before there was an understanding ended up with additional coverage. And I think, candidly, you'll be seeing more of them as time goes by, as if buildings that were built before there was an understanding of Jay's ruling are remeasured for future work, the coverage is going to exceed what was allowed. And so it's an issue that I think we're going to have to deal with going forward. I think and there was a second question too, because the total coverage now is 2,950 square feet, 56 square feet, which exceeds the allowed coverage for the building area.
I think it's 53 now, isn't it?
Well, it's 56 on the application, but
Oh.
anyway, that's because, well, you know, there was a discussion between the professionals on the building side and the new surveyor. See, they changed surveyors in the middle of the project. The new surveyor measured according to the new rules, and said we were over the 2,950 square feet. So I discussed that with Jay, as I had previously in other cases, and he said because we were still in process, he would consider any change to be part of the original special permit application where the original building was greater than the 2,950 square feet. And so that's why we filed the special permit rather than a variance. And I mean, I think Jay's ruling is correct in that regard. In any event, so those are the two issues. We'd be happy to take any questions.
Well, before we go to questions, Jay, would you like to speak for yourself?
Thank you. Jay Briggs, Building Commissioner, Town of Chatham. To touch on what Bill just said, I believe it can be done under a special permit modification rather than a variance because the job is still ongoing. We haven't issued a final certificate of occupancy, so it's still not a closed-out job. I don't know that the issuance of the certificate of occupancy would be the drop-dead date for future special permit modifications, but in my mind, that's where it is right now, and we're not there yet. So that's why I don't believe it needs a variance. Secondly, the initial proposal, or the first proposal, was to reduce the building coverage by 25%. It was far above the allowed building coverage for the zoning district and for the lot. And so they were trying to make it conform. I don't think that someone should be penalized for trying to make a project conform. They could have easily kept it above the 2950 from the onset, and then that would be the springboard for future projects. But they tried to make it conform. They went over by, I had the 2953 square feet, not the 2956, but at that point, the difference of 3 square feet is minimal, in my opinion. I don't want to speak for the board, but that's my train of thought. I think that when someone tries to make something compliant, I think that's a good thing. They didn't have to come in with that as their first go-around, but that's what they did. So they ended up at 24% reduction in overall size of the building, and I think that is still a win. So.
Thank you. Okay, questions from the board. Buck?
So, Mark, how did you hear about the requirement of an as-built to be provided?
How did I hear about a requirement of that? I believe somebody emailed it to me at some point.
Well,
Some-
if I could,
I'm sorry,
the as-built is done by the surveyor, not by Mark.
but doesn't Mark have to call the surveyor and ask for it? Or does the surveyor just do it without Mark's approval?
No, it was probably requested by the owner.
Well, you don't have an owner, do you?
Well, we do,
Well,
we did,
Air Safe Contracting, Kate Earls and her husband.
yeah.
were the-
Oh, so
were the-
you are the contractor?
No, no. He's the architect, she's the contractor. And so she called Coastal Engineering
Yep.
to get an as-built site plan because she's aware of the fact that you need an as-built to get a CO. So that's why,
Yeah.
and it retained Coastal.
And that's typical in every project, really.
So the second part of the question is, when you're advised or educated or explained that the construction side of the project has to get an as-built, there's no comments that what the definition of coverage is in that notification?
No.
Well, as you said, Bill, everybody used to go to the corners of the foundation, and now we have a new process. So if everybody's just saying, well, we need an as-built, maybe I'm off on the,
Well,
that's
no,
fine.
I mean, I think even Jay will agree that there's been some confusion on the construction side with regard to the requirements for, regarding building coverage and overhangs and measuring to corner boards or measuring to foundations. I mean, some of the builders are very resistant to measuring to the corner boards, and it's been a real struggle, at least for me, convincing my clients that that's what you have to do, and that's what you should design for. But this is all, relatively speaking, it's all new. If you recall, when I was here a week ago dealing with 26 Salt Pond Road, they were some 67 square feet over what had been the permitted building coverage. In that circumstance, the original project, which was a modification of the existing house, had begun in 2019, or even earlier than that. And so the measurement was to the foundation only, and that was Ryder and Wilcox, was the engineer. And then they did a modification of that to add a bay window. Again, just, I don't even know if we even talked about building coverage when I came here to modify that to add the bay window. And then they came in for a garage. And so when they using, the current interpretation, they went out and measured, they were 67 feet over what had been approved. And so, it's because they measured to the corner boards instead of measuring to the foundation. And so it's not like people are going out willy-nilly trying to expand coverage. I mean, the building's the same building that you approved, it's just being measured in a slightly different way.
I think my question's been answered. I have one question for Jay. Jay, what was the date that measuring to the corner boards, or whatever the term is that you professionally use, when was the date of that enacted or become the law of the land?
April 1st, 2020. Any submissions after April 1st, 2020 had to abide by the new interpretation.
Any applications?
Any applications received after that date?
And when somebody came and got a building permit after that, nobody put did the town put a piece of paper in there saying that, we're going to be measuring over the corner boards instead of the foundation?
No, we did not.
Okay.
No, but we looked at the plans, and a lot of the plans after that time, or sometimes even before that time, the surveyor or our engineer would put a note right on the plan, coverage taken to corner boards.
We've had builders in here say, well, we don't build to the print. We know what they meant. That was a classic for me. I'm all set. Thank you very much.
Bill?
So you built the house originally, to the original plan, which just had the smaller overhang over the front entrance,
Yes.
right? Okay. And when I do the subtraction here, it's with the corner boards and the overhang, is 76 square feet additional? Does that sound right?
Yeah,
Yes.
about that.
How much was the corner board addition versus the roof addition?
Well, it's a lot easier for us to describe what the roof addition is.
Okay.
Because that's an easy measurement, which I asked Mark to do
Yeah,
before we got here today. The corner board thing, I wouldn't tell you, but Mark, what do you?
the original design, the roof was 21 square feet.
Uh-huh.
And the existing one now, after it was rebuilt, I believe it's 60, something like that.
Somewhere in the 60 range?
Yeah,
Which is
3
fine.
by 20.
And when was the house completed?
Well, it's still under construction, so I'm not sure. We don't have an occupancy permit or,
Okay. But I thought it was more or less done, no? I mean, it
Well,
looked
it
like-
is,
much.
yeah. I mean, if you put the
I think
picture
there's
up
a
against
temporary
that.
occupancy that was given.
Yeah, I think the new owners are living in it, but
So the additional roof was added sometime in the last 6 months
Yes.
to 8 months,
yeah,
whatever?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, what do you think? It looks a lot better, doesn't it? Brings the scale of the building down?
I would agree with you
Yeah.
with that question, sure.
Because I think, well, because it's still a special permit, I mean, the issue for the board is whether the change is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the previous design of the previous building. So I think by that measure, we think it's kind of an improvement rather than a substantial detriment, so.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a feel for the timing
well,
and the,
Yeah,
the scale and,
It was just, the new owner called and she said, can we redo the front entry? Because it looks too angular for me. And I was delighted when she said that because, I get to have it redone. Really,
but you weren't aware of the regulations would have required you to add that to the
yeah,
square footage.
I think I might have misread how they were calculating it, or I don't really remember exactly.
And I think, as you said, it was caught by the surveyor when they did the as-built.
That's right. And I think the original survey, when we got the special permit, was the building coverage was listed at, it was smaller than it really was, even from the drawings that were submitted to you. So even though that number is not accurate, the drawings that were approved for the special permit, I mean, that's the building that's there now are basically the drawings that were presented. We didn't bump out anywhere or do anything crazy with the building.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had.
Paul?
To be fair, the corner board issue really is not what puts it over the 2950, right? It's
That's correct.
It's the change with respect to the roof,
Right.
yeah. I have no further questions.
Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was going to say the same thing that Paul just said. So I have a question. Why are we talking about corner boards today, then?
Well, we submitted a plan, an application that gave us particular square footage of building coverage. And the building exceeds that coverage. So presumably, whether we had this addition or not, we would have been before you to modify the special permit to include that additional square footage. So I think we could have come back with a modification request to request this coverage. But, you know, it was sort of the new owner asked for it, and Mark didn't think about coverage, so they just went and did it. So, you know, I'd ask you to think about this thing as, you know, if we had come and requested it, and the sole issue was whether it's substantially more detrimental.
Yeah.
I think it's not, and I hope you agree, but that's really the issue that's before you. It's not a question of which one came first, the corner board or the front door cover.
Okay.
But
Dave?
I have no questions, Dave.
Yeah, I don't have any questions either. I have
All right.
opinions, but not questions.
well, why don't you tell us what your opinion is? So the,
I'll
well,
move to
before you
close the.
go anywhere, there was a question about when Jay's determination became effective. And we're not quarreling about that, but I think something is that how was the construction side of the business notified that this was the new ruling? I mean, because it's not like, I mean, I don't know what Jay did. I mean, the initial notice he sent out was November 12th, 2019, and that went to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And then February 10th, 2020, there's a memorandum to attorneys, builders, and design professionals that relates back to the November 12th, 2019. But I'm not certain that that got, in general, to all the builders in town, or all the surveyors. You know, in other words, it's not like it was a headline in the Chronicle, which of course we all read religiously every week. But, so, you know, again, we're not quarreling with the dates that Jay used. I just want you to be aware of the fact that not all builders, surveyors, or design professionals were aware of it at that time. Some of them were, and some of them weren't, so.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. So the issue here is either 3 or 6 square feet, whichever number you believe. So Mark had stated that the increase in roof coverage was 60 square feet thereabouts. So my building coverage has no relation to this case whatsoever. They would have been under the maximum allowed coverage. They wouldn't even have had to come back for a modification of the special permit if they were under the 2950. The only reason they had today is because they're over the 2950.
Thank you. Paul,
I'll move to close the hearing and move into deliberations.
Dave Veach seconds.
we need a vote on that, Buck?
Buck votes yes.
Bill? You're voting on this?
Bill votes yes.
All votes yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. So deliberations. Bill?
Well, I think you're benefiting from the fact that Jay's here today, and, you know, in his opinion, this isn't a variance issue, but it's a special permit issue, because, and probably from the fact that it's not a closed permit as well, you know, is to your benefit. Given that, and given what I see from the differences in the roof and whether it's substantially more detrimental, no. I don't think there's an impact here. And despite the fact that I do have some concerns with the, you know, whether, you know, who knows the regs and who doesn't, and why they're not followed specifically, or at least applied for at the right time. All being said, at this point, I would most likely support this application.
Paul?
Yes, I think the reasoning that Jay has offered is a good one with respect to the overall project and its diminishing building coverage. And I think in general, it's It's unfortunate that there were 3 or 6 feet difference. Brings them back here, but overall, I think it's still an improvement over the original design, and I will support the requested special permit.
Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I were voting, I would support it. However, I think that it's the responsibility of the professionals, builders that make a boatload of money in Chatham to find out what the rules are before they come in here and start to work. It's not Jay's responsibility to run up to everybody and say what the rules are. He's made it known, and now they have to look at the rules.
Dave?
Well, I agree with Bill and Paul, this, when looking at this from whether it's substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood, there's no doubt in my mind that it's not. I agree with Mark. I think it's an improvement visually, the porch on the front of the building. There's no doubt in my mind about that. With respect to the other issue, as Jay pointed out, I don't think that's really at issue here at all, the question of the corner boards and how we measure in that transition. That's something that's ongoing, and I can, I start to think about some of the implications of these projects that maybe the foundation measurement was below of what's allowed, but when you add the corner boards, you get above that. How they're going to deal with that, I'm sure the staff will, and/or when we're involved, we'll find a fair way to do that. But there's transition that's going to be going on with respect to this, and things, and we are seeing more frequently things coming in that where the as-builts come up with a different number than what we approved. I don't think that's necessarily unusual, and I think down the road there'll be fewer of them. But for now, I think it's just part of what we're going to be doing here. So I will support it.
Buck?
Well, I have some conflicting thoughts. My first thing is, and I don't know if it's even true anymore, but all my life I've always heard ignorance of the law is no excuse. So maybe that's some stupid comment, doesn't hold weight in court. I'm not one of the members of the bar, so I don't know. But that's what I was always told.
Nowadays, you have to be mentally incompetent.
Thank you.
I'm drooling over here, I'm drooling.
All right. But anyways, I know that did go in my mind a little bit. I thought Randy asked a really good question about, we really don't care about corner boards and coverage and all that other stuff. That's sort of like just confusing the issue. I don't know if I can accept, I hear it used, our litmus paper test is substantially more detrimental. When you're coming back for a modification where a mistake was made, I don't think it's fair to use that analogy, because anybody could just build something bigger than what's permitted and then say, well, it's a much nicer house than what you approved, so what do you care? I'm not sure that makes me feel good as somebody, as a volunteer sitting here trying to figure out what we're supposed to do with all our cases. So I'm not using the decision or the ultimate decision of is it or isn't it substantially more or worse or better or whatever. I don't think that holds any water. I am concerned. I've listened to some great comments. I did hear that Jay said we wouldn't even be here. That got squeezed in here right at the end. I haven't had a chance to digest that, so I'm still, I'm confused. I'm not confused. I'm not clear on which way to go, but those are my comments.
Well, I understand Jay's reasoning, why it could be a special permit. But I go back to the fact of the original application, where part of what we approved was the demolition of the existing building, and with it would go the grandfather aspect of it. If they had come in and wanted something that was 3,200 square feet or whatnot, that would have been part of it. And we would have considered that as a special permit. So we did approve a special permit, and we did accept the notion that it was going to be conforming. And that was part of what we thought was great. So a mistake was made, and they come in, and they want to modify that special permit. Well, I don't buy the argument about de minimis. It's either right or wrong. This is wrong. And I still feel that this should have been asked for as a variance. And I will not support a special permit. Yes, Buck?
There was one other point that I'm still processing a lot of this stuff. I haven't reached the bottom line, although. When Jay mentioned that the previous building, as far as I was concerned, it was a large chicken coop. But nevertheless, that was built before 1995. It was probably built before 1950. And at that time, coverage was probably 25%.
It was actually built in 1945,
Okay, well, that's close. So.
so there was no zoning at that
And the
time.
coverage, okay, but if it was built,
Right.
from 1952 to 1992, coverage was probably 25%.
It was.
So when you say you're tearing something down that was built to the old regs, I don't know if I'm really swayed by that piece of information. Well, this is significantly less, 25% I've heard. The maximum now is 2950, isn't it? And it's right up there. So the point I'm making is that fact that the building was much larger and we got a smaller building, I'm not sure that weighs into the reason to approve this request. I'm
Yeah,
not
Mr.
thinking that way.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
according to Jay, if we take off 3 square feet of that roof, which is not going to make it look any better, then we don't have to be here. Is that really how you guys want to decide this?
I don't think that's an appropriate question at all.
I think it's completely
I
appropriate.
don't. Paul?
All right, I'll move to approve the application as submitted.
Dave Veach seconds.
Those in favor, please, well, I'll just ask everybody. Okay. Buck, how do you vote? Yes or no?
No.
Bill?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Dave Veach?
Yes.
And I vote no. That does not pass, 2-3. Other business, Paul? We have some minutes. Are these,
I think those are for next go-around.
no
There will
minutes
be
today?
3 sets of minutes for next time.
Okay. Well, I know, and then how can you remember what happened, right? Okay, anything else to bring in front of the board today?
I don't think so. I guess I will move to adjourn.
And Dave Veach seconds.
All right, we need a vote on that. Buck?
Buck says yes.
Bill?
Bill votes yes.
Paul?
All votes yes.
Randy?
Yes.
Dave Veach votes yes.
And I vote yes. And again, thank you very much, Jay, for agreeing to join us today and
We'll always
in the
be
future.
short.
Thanks for having me.
That's right. All right, we're all done. And the time, Sarah?